Hello and welcome everybody, and thank you guys for joining me again. My name is Wilkie and I'm here with the next Kritika Online video. This will be something along the lines of a tips and facts about Doom Blade. You may not know. It's partially mechanical, so there are a few mechanics you may not know, but for those of you who followed me and watched some of my guide videos, there are a few things that I already mentioned here and there, but this is just going to be a compilation for new and old players alike, in which I'll try to cover everything I know, which hopefully is the majority of things you need to know about the class. But with that being said, I am not the best Doom Blade, and there might be things that I either think of being too mundane, or maybe I don't know myself yet. So if you have anything in particular or anything specific that I missed that you want, that you think is worth mentioning, put it down into the comments below and I'll pin it so that everybody in the future who stumbles upon this video can actually scroll down into the comment section. At the very top they will see maybe a comment or two in regards to other mechanics that I may or may have not talked about. Anyways, we're just gonna start out with a few things. Now, this video is not gonna be terribly long, but I'll try to still keep it as short as possible. So the first thing I want to mention is Deadly Draw's hitbox. I did actually mention this in my other guide video, but just so you know, Deadly Draw actually has a hitbox even behind the character. So you can see there's a reasonable gap behind me and the training dummy, and that was actually too big. Way to go. Way to showcase that. Okay. Stop moving! Damn it! Okay, this was probably a very good example. So you can see that he is actually not at my butt. He's not actually scratching my butt, but he is at a relatively distance. This can be used for both PvE and PvP. Just keep that in mind whenever you use Deadly Draw, that you can still actually clip people behind you. Just don't rely on it, but for myself, I very often caught people trying to dodge through me when I use Deadly Draw, and that's a very good thing to know. Purgatory Wave. And I did also cover this in one of the other videos, but Purgatory Wave, if you hover over the skill effects, you can see that you basically have 3 charges. If you're just gonna fire a basic one, you can see basically just passes through the enemy and that's it. If you do a full charged one, not only does it change color, but it drags, that was a weird spike, it drags the enemy with you. Not only does it deal more damage, but it deals a lot more hits. But there's a sort of, I guess, hidden mechanic that's not really mentioned anywhere. And that is, if you use Dancing Shadows and then pop Purgatory Wave, what happens is, you're gonna be firing a quick version that doesn't have any wind up at all, but it's gonna deal the same amount of hits as a full charged one. However, with reduced damage. As you can see, now this is like a purple, light purple color. If you do it after this, the color is the same, but the effects are different. And if you do a full charged one, it's gonna have this very bright, almost pink, reddish glow to it. So what I'm saying is, if you want a quick execution, this is particularly, at least in my opinion, effective in PvP. Because what I tend to do is I just slap, and it doesn't matter how many Dancing Shadows you do, you can actually shoot a couple of them and then use it. But what I tend to do is I just sneak around the corner, zap one, and do Purgatory Wave, because what that does is going to drag the enemy with you, leaving you a bit more time to engage, as well as deal a bit more damage. And as far as PvE goes, it's a nice poke. If you just want a quick execution, I suggest doing it that way. Also, for those of you who want to build stacks, instead of doing it that way, let's say you want to use Phantom Cross and Purgatory Wave, what I recommend is do that. And that's going to be faster, and your Purgatory Wave is going to be dealing even more damage. So this is personally just a thing that I highly recommend doing. For the next part, we're going to talk about Soul Steal. Now, I did mention that this skill was not really a favorite of mine, because first of all, I didn't read this description, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Because the game actually tells you a lot of these mechanics, but not all. If you look at the skill, it has finishing / attack power, and then it has serious finishing / attack power. And it actually says hold down the skill button to build soul energy, and it's actually here. Release the skill key when the soul sword flashes to inflict serious damage to the enemy. And what that basically means is, if you do full charged one, let me get my debuff out of the way. We have a full charged one that deals 20 million roundabout, and a quick one 17.5. But let's just go for the serious one. There we go, that was a flash. That's a major increase in damage. So this is how you should always use, whenever you can, that is. But if you have time to charge it up, make sure you actually release it on the flash. Do not charge it to the full, because that's what I assumed, and that's what I always did. That's why I thought the skill was pretty poop, because you can actually charge it for quite a while. But this actually makes the skill a lot more interesting and a lot more viable. This can also be applied to PvP. If you know that the hit is going to be enough to kill the enemy, but you know you might potentially drop your combo, just either go for the very quick one or go for the serious one. Once again, as you can see, this is not really like at the beginning. You'll probably start looking at the soul sword, but as soon as you start using this more often, you'll actually get the hang of it, and then it's pretty much becoming second nature. And actually, I really like the skill after I learned how it works, because it is one of the hardest hitting skills you have at a very decent cooldown. The next thing I want to talk about is a very quick one, and that's about 6 Blade Leap. Everybody knows that 6 Blade Leap has an iframe. It says so on the skill tab. It says invincible, which basically means you will not be damaged, you will not be CC'd. But what a lot of people don't know is that you actually have a quite long iframe. And what that means is, if you see this white flashing aura, I want to call it, that's basically the time you are invincible. So even after you land it, you can walk around for, it's probably almost 2 seconds in which you are invulnerable. Even if I attack, it's still gonna last. As you can see here, I can move, I use the slash, and afterwards I still have the white flash on. That's a very powerful thing to use in PvP. It also makes the usage in PvE to dodge certain things a lot more streamlined and a lot more viable, because a lot of people thought you were only invincible during the jump, but you actually have a very, very, very long iframe after the usage of that skill. For the second last thing I want to talk about, or skill, we're going to talk about Shadow Stride. Now, Shadow Stride has two things. First of all, it has a, I'd like to call it sweet spot mechanic, but basically the serious damage you saw at Soulsteel, it also applies to Shadow Stride. Now, similarly to that, you can see the blade flashing, and that's pretty much the moment you want to release that skill. If I just charge it to the max, I'm dealing around 6.3-ish. So let's do another damage check. I was like, oh, that's around about 6, and if I do the quick one, it's pretty much the same. And also notably, try to remember how long the time between the slash and the shadow follow-up is. Now, if we do the proper one, you can not only see that the damage increases quite significantly, but also the animation and the time the shadow needs to start moving after you is a lot longer. This is, well, technically a good and a bad thing. The good thing about that is, as you can see, similar to what I told you about the 6 Blade Leap, after you launched Shadow Stride, you have an iframe. So by using it with the right timing, you're gonna extend the iframe and as well deal increased damage. But if you're just looking for a very quick iframe, for example, you don't have any other iframe and Belladonna is gonna use her time bomb or something, you can just tap it, and all you gotta do is time it right, and you will still have the iframe. Now, take a look at the damage numbers. That was around 10.5 million. 11.5, 13.4. Okay, let's see if we can get it consistent. So let's say the maximum was 13.5 million. Let me just use Curse Drinker. Oh, look at that, we have like 18 million. 16.7. As you can see, there's a notable difference between the damage Shadow Stride used to do and it does now. And there's a very simple explanation for that. Remember at the very beginning of the video I said curse stacks do have two mechanics or two uses, and this is also another thing the game tells you. For example, very clearly here, increased attack power per stacked curse level. So very simple, if you have curse stacks, and obviously 5 is gonna be the biggest damage increase, that was a very clean hit. If you have curse stacks, then you'll be rewarded with a higher damage Shadow Strike. This is not really something I pay attention to that much, but this is still something to keep in mind, especially in PvP, because Shadow Strike is one of the hardest hitting skills we have in PvP. So if you time it right with the right amount of curse stacks, you can boost your damage output quite significantly just for the sake of it. If I do the quick version, it's also going to deal more damage than it used to. So it applies to both the proper sweet spot use and the quick execution as well. Now for the last thing that I want to mention is we're going to talk about ultimate draw. The first thing is it has a pretty large range, and by pretty large I mean pretty large. This is probably gonna hit him. I don't exactly know what the range is, but yeah, it did actually whack the enemy in the face, and you can see that is quite a significant different distance. One cutting wave is not even close enough to get there. The second thing I want to talk about is even if you don't hit the initial slash, the second hit will still apply the damage. So I will show this on Belladonna. This is a very prominent example. As you can see here, when she goes into her tornado mode, then she's gonna be immune. But I'm just gonna use it because the initial hit doesn't really deal any damage anyway. All it's used for is CC. As you can see, I did not hit it, but even though I did not hit the initial slash, the second one will still hit and still deal damage. So the reason you see this low number here is because Belladonna has a damage reduction during that phase, but what I mean is you don't have to hit the first hit in order to damage with the second one. Last but not least, just pay attention to how the sword looks now and how it's going to be looking afterwards. I'll give you a small hint. There's going to be a very obvious buff bar that just randomly appeared. And for those of you who still did not get it, if you use Ultimate Draw, you're going to be having Curse Drinker on afterwards. And that's particularly interesting, because even if you have it on cooldown, right? So I just popped my Curse Drinker. Now the Curse Drinker bar is actually going to be bugged because I used it and I already had it. But you can still see the duration. You can still see the duration at the bottom here. And you'll see it as soon as he sheathes the sword, the duration is going to pop up back to 30 seconds. So even if the skill is on cooldown, it's just going to refresh it while not interfering with the cooldown. The only thing it does not do, it does not recover curse stacks. So even so you can see like 15 seconds left. By the time I hit it, I probably recovered 2 through the curse buff. And there we go, but I did not recover the 5 curse stacks. So that's the only difference between getting the Curse Drinker buff through Ultimate Draw as well, or compared to using Curse Drinker itself. Anyways, this concludes this video. Boy, I did actually talk more than I wanted to, but these are my things that I learned so far. I think some of these are not as well known as others. But as I said initially, if there's anything you want to have me take as input or even note down in the comments, feel free to put it down and I'll definitely pin it so that everybody else can see. Thanks for everybody, and yeah, hopefully I'll see you guys next time as well.